Hello, my name is James Leviton and this is my presentation. So what is N-ball? N-ball is an invasion game, meaning it's similar to basketball, rugby, handball and even football, as all of these sports have the aim to invade the opponent's territory while attempting to score points or goals while the opposing team are trying to keep the points or goals to a minimum. N-ball is an 80-minute match played in 4 quarters. In N-ball, players can run with the ball and move in any direction and pass in any direction, unlike basketball, where if they go over the halfway line, they can't go back into the defending half, otherwise possession is turned over. The way to score a point in N-ball is by completing a pass to a teammate who is stood in the attacking team's end zone, but he must complete the pass by successfully catching the ball. So in this presentation, I will be going through what I've done to identify a problem in the game of N-ball, then how I've used data analysis to collect data on the problem. I will then explain what coaching intervention I have used to help improve the problem in a coaching practice. Then lastly, I'm going to show how a nutrition plan of how the individual could prepare for a game of N-ball effectively. So undergoing notational analysis. So firstly, Hughes and Frank's 2003 states that notational analysis is used by coaches and sports scientists to gather objective data on the performance of athletes. Tactics, technique, individual athletes, movement, and work rate can all be analysed, enabling coaches and athletes to learn more about performance and gain a competitive advantage. Firstly, in my notational analysis, I observed a game of N-ball and spotted that the yellow bibs were struggling to convert their passes into goals, so I decided to focus on them as a team performance and came up with key performance indicators, KPIs, to gather a tally chart to collect data to show results on specific areas to improve. Key performance indicators, or KPIs. A performance indicator is a selection or combination of an action variable that aims to define some or all aspects of a performance. Clearly, to be useful, performance indicators should relate to successful performance or outcomes. Hughes and Bartlett 2002. KPIs are also very important as they help to reflect the performance of a team in achieving of its goals and objectives. Bois, Kent 2004. I've used a systematic analysis flowchart similar to Hay and Reed 1988 model, where they looked at the technique of a long jumper. So adapting that to my flowchart, I have used team on the right. So I've used team, which is the yellow bibs, then into zones, which I have used to pass from zone to zone. For example, pass from zone 1 played into zone 1. Zone 1-1. Then pass action, I've used which type of passing technique, and then finally the outcome. Was it successful or unsuccessful? Did they catch it or was it intercepted or dropped? So defining my KPIs. So to start off with, defining the zones. As shown on the diagram created by myself, that zone 1 is always the defending zone, so the first zone from a restart. Zone 2 is always the middle sector zone. And lastly, zone 3 is the attacking final third, where the goals are scored for that team. So next we've got pass action. So I've got different definitions from different sports of the types of passing techniques, as they are all usual pass actions in different sports such as handball, netball and basketball. If you'd like to pause the video and go through them, please do that now and then resume playing afterwards. So then next we've got defining the KPI, so we've got defining the outcome. Pretty straightforward, this one. Successful outcome would mean a catch by a teammate, and an unsuccessful outcome would mean an interception by the opposition or a pass that has gone out of play due to a drop or a poor throw. So here shows the graph, the first graph, which shows the successful and unsuccessful passes in which zones. This has come from my tally charts that I created. So looking at this data, I picked out the least successful zone in passing from zone 2 to 3. So it's the one highlighted in the blue. With only 3 out of 5 passes in that zone being unsuccessful, meaning they had a 60% unsuccessful rate in that zone, which when it's a zone that has a chance of scoring, it could be potentially costing the team a goal or two, which could be the demise of their loss. So following on from the research I gathered from the first graph, I wanted to dive deeper into the problem, so I looked at the types of passing techniques used in the zones and if they were successful or unsuccessful. Then I found that in the same zone, the most unsuccessful type of pass technique used was the overhand pass, with 2 unsuccessful passes and no successful passes in zone 2 to 3. Then when compared with another zone that passing into zone 3, so the attacking zone, to zone 3 to 3, as pointed out in the blue again, the only unsuccessful pass technique in the zone was, you guessed it, overhand pass technique, with that being the only pass technique unsuccessful in that zone. So, through my analysis, my notational analysis, I identified the problem in N-ball. So the problem I've identified for the yellows in the game of N-ball is that it's been identified that yellow's inability to use the overhand pass technique effectively in the final third of the pitch is a problem, which reduces the number of scoring opportunities. So the coaching intervention I'm going to be using is the constraints-led approach. A constraints-led approach is a coaching method based on the principles of non-linear pedagogy. It supports a more hands-off approach to coaching through the manipulation of certain constraints, such as environment, the task, and the individual, by Drowning in the Shallows 2016. Individual constraints refer to the unique structure and functional characteristics of learners and include factors related to their physical, psychological, cognitive, and emotional structure. A learner's morphology, fitness level, technical ability, and psychological factors like anxiety and motivation may shape the way individuals approach a movement task. For example, taller basketball players are more likely to seek points from rebounds and dunks than smaller players who may opt for set shots from different distances. These different constraints on individual learners illustrate the distinct strategies that games players may use to solve movement problems in team sports. The next constraint would be environmental constraints, refer to physical factors such as the surroundings of learners, including gravity, altitude, and the information available in learning contexts, such as amount of light or level of noise in a gymnasium or sports field. Other important physical environmental constraints include the parks, backyards, empty spaces, and alleyways that provide the backdrop for early sport experiences of many active children. Second important category of environmental constraints includes social factors like peer groups, social and cultural expectations. Finally, task constraints are perhaps the most important constraints for physical educators because of their significance in learning. They include the goal of the specific task, rules of the activity, and the implements of or equipment used during the learning experience. The proficiency with which physical educators can manipulate task constraints like modifying equipment available to learners or the size of playing areas, setting relevant task goals in games, or enforcing specific rules for performance can shape the emergence of learners' behaviors in physical education. For example, if children have no understanding of the important game principles of hitting to space, players often create a long and narrow adapted court compared to a wide and shallow court. This is all suggested by the Self-Organization and Constraints in Sports Performance, 2013. For my session, I will use the task constraints from the constraints-led approach, as I will be playing a usual even-sided teams game of N-ball with the scoring system as 4 goals for a goal scored by an underhand pass, 3 goals for a goal scored by a bounce pass, 2 goals scored by a chest pass, and lastly 1 goal for overhand pass. This is to encourage the participants to use more effective pass techniques while not saying that they can't use a certain pass technique, for example the overhand pass, which we have learned is ineffective. To promote my aim of the session, which is to promote the use of different passing techniques other than overhand pass in zone 3. So nutrition for a pre-match meal, which I've focused on. So Hargreaves et al. 2004 states a high carbohydrate diet in the days before exercise, as well as indigestion of carbohydrate meals 3 hours before exercise. So my athlete will eat at 12, ready for a 3 o'clock kickoff time. My athlete is 79 kilograms, so therefore Burke 2011 states that the carbohydrates needed for the athlete that is a moderate to high intensity athlete does 1 to 3 hours a day of moderate to high intensity exercise needs 474 grams of carbohydrates for a day. So splitting that into 3 meals, it would be 158 grams for the pre-match meal. This level of carbohydrates are important, as study by Mojika 2010 was shown that a team which used carbohydrate loaded players compared with mixed group of carbohydrate players, that the distance skated, number of shifts skated, amount of time skated within shifts, and skating speed were all increased in the carbohydrate loaded players compared with the mixed diet group, with the differences being most marked in the final period, meaning it helped them perform better in the later stages of the skate due to slow release carbohydrates. Protein needed 1.2 to 1.7 grams per kilogram by the Nutrition and Athletic Performance 2009. So my participant weighs 79 kilograms. I times that by 1.2 grams of protein, which is 94.8 grams of protein per day. But we only need 1 meal, as we've said, so I divide that by 3 meals, which leaves us with 31.6 grams of protein for the pre-match meal. Thomas et al. 2016 states the low amount of fat to avoid gastrointestinal distress and facilitate gastric emptying. So we're looking for a low as fats as possible. So my meal plan I've chosen through Nutritics is a 65 gram of dried penny pasta with 80 grams dolmio bolognese tomato low fat pasta sauce. So it's not a plain dry meal, as the athlete has to enjoy his meal. With 98 grams of sliced up turkey and 90 grams of baked sweet potato all mixed into that delicious pasta dish. With the 250 milliliters of blueberry and blackcurrant smoothie and 2 bananas to finish for something sweet. Not only does this meal reach the requirements, but it's enjoyable and not too much of a plateful to look at. So hydration. Water makes up 2/3 of our body, which makes it vital we drink enough fluid to maintain a healthy balance. Many people get dehydrated by not drinking enough fluid, or by losing fluids and not replacing them. NHS Inform 2020. Before exercise, drink 16 ounces of water 3 hours before physical activity begins. So we drink 16 ounces of water with the meal plan above in the before slide, and another 8 to 16 ounces right before exercising. During exercise, every 15 to 20 minutes, drink at least 4 to 6 ounces of fluid. After exercise, drink 16 to 24 ounces of water for every pound lost during physical activity. Consuming rehydrating beverages like fruit smoothies and eating watery foods such as fruits and vegetables along with salty ones can help reduce lost fluids and electrolytes, suggested by True Sport 2017. If the athlete isn't hydrating, this could cause dizziness, headaches, and tiredness, and could lead to a dip in performance, as the athlete won't feel 100% when playing. And this is my reference list, APA. Thank you for listening.